everyone, and welcome to the Red Brick House. Today I wanted to have a chat about the Kawandi I've been making. It's the first time I've made one. I've already made a previous video about how I started it out, how I did my first go around, and if you're interested, you can check that video out. I'll put it at the end of this video so that you can easily find it. And so, but today this is part 2. I wanted to talk about some mistakes I made. I wanted to talk about some things I've learned along the way. Because anytime you do something new, there's always a learning curve, right? So I have learned a few things, and I have fixed some, I've learned how to fix some of the mistakes that I did make. And so I wanted to share those with you. And also, I wanted to share with you the progress that I've made on it. So let's get right into it. So the first mistake I made, this was a mistake I shouldn't have made because I have sewn a lot of different things. I have sewn things without patterns. I should not have made this mistake. But when I cut out my backing and my material for the size of the throw that I wanted to make, I didn't allow for the seam allowance. I just cut right against the edge of the throw blanket I was using as a pattern, and I didn't put a seam allowance in. So now my Kawandi is quite narrow. It's a little bit more narrow than I'd like for it to be. But, these things happen. What can you do? I could probably add some extra fabric on the edges or something, but then my corners would be off, and so I'm just gonna call it a lap quilt now, if you will, because that is something I was really kind of disappointed about. But it's just something, it's just an absent-minded mistake that just happens sometimes. Okay, so I'm going to show you now some of the other things that I have learned as I went along. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about the lining for a minute. So this blue you see here, this is what I'm lining. It's just an old sheet, and that's what I'm using to line it. And this is the patchwork that I've done, and then here's the backing here. And so where I left you in the last video is that I had this outside edge done through here, and then I had put in my lining. Now, when you're working on your lining and you're going all the way around for the first time with your lining in place, I had pinned it to the backing back here, but I found that I needed a lot more pins, or you need to make sure that as you're working on this, that you're keeping this lining pulled up to the top. Because sometimes, okay, say I'd have a pin here and a pin here, and then it would kind of sag down while I was stitching in between those pins. And so I had to constantly keep moving it up. So either you could fix that by adding more pins, closer together, or just make sure that as you're stitching it that you are, pulling your lining in place. As you can see, I have my little fur buddy here. This is Azriel, and she loves being anywhere I am, so don't mind her. So anyway, that was just something that I kind of learned as I went, that I should have put more pins in. But if you're just working on it, just keep an eye on it as you're going along. After you get this next row of work in, or no, you would be up here. I'm sorry. You would be up here. And after you stitch this second row right here, then you're pretty much good. It stays in place then. So that was one thing that I learned. Use more pins. And then the next thing I wanted to talk about is the corners. Okay, so the corners can be quite tricky. When I did this corner here, I added, I'm not sure which direction I was going, but I added some fabrics, and sometimes the fabrics don't really come together and overlap each other. And so here I had to add in a little bit of extra fabric just to kind of bridge the gap between some of these. And that's happened quite a few times. So that's one thing to kind of think about. Maybe in your corners, it might be a better idea to have like a bigger swatch of fabric, like this black one up here. So another thing I wanted to mention was when you're adding your seam allowance, when you're adding your fabric, because I have heard people making Kawandis on YouTube and how they say, you know, you want a generous seam allowance, like when you're adding on your fabric. And it is so true because like right here, I have a good seam allowance on the blue, but look how close I sewed to the edge right here. I hope you can see that. I sewed pretty close to the edge on that bird material there. And I should have stopped at this row. And then it would have been better. That's what I've been doing now. But the blue got caught under, like this seam allowance went under. But this can flip open like that, and you don't want that. So what I've been doing is that I have been, if we go over to this floral pattern here, I've been stopping about like right here. This is my last stitch line right here, and then I'll add another fabric over top of here. And that way it all gets connected. So let me show you on this one right here. You want it to be like that, where this, like this brown seam allowance is tucked under, and then it's also stitched to the bottom of these two fabrics here. That's what you want. So now I'm going to show you my progress. I'm going to lay it all out so you can see the whole thing in one big picture. Okay guys, so I have it all laid out, and I hope you can differentiate the throw from my quilt on my bed, but this is like the best place I had, except from like just laying it on the floor, which I didn't want to do right now. But I'll kind of come up closer and kind of give you a walk around, kind of like I do in the garden, of how it looks. I think the corners are my favorite right now because there's just a lot of fabric there in those spots. So I'll get a little closer. And there's the first corner right here. And then I'll just walk up this way so you can see all the different patterns of fabric. I tried to kind of do a collage of different patterns, also with some plain fabrics mixed in. And I'm really just putting it at random. When I add my fabric, I just kind of make sure that it's not another fabric I've put really close by. And then if it's not, then I just put it on there. Also, I look for the size that I need because I cut kind of different shapes when I cut these pieces of fabric out. So I'm going to go over there. There's that corner over there. I think that's my starting point there. And then I'm going to kind of turn you this way, just it's easier for me. And bring you overhead this way. It takes a while to do this. I am enjoying it. I am enjoying the process, but it does take a little while to do it. And I will show you that corner right there. So there it is. So let me know if you've ever made a Kawandi before and how you made it. How big was it? Did you have the same problems I'm having when you made your first one? Are you just starting to make one? Like, have you never, are you like me where you've never made one before and you want to try something new? Let me know, or if you have tips, if you want to give me some tips on how I can make this better, I would love to hear that too. So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.